place like Michigan. So my mom said, oh, this is not going to work. So she would grab the junior guide and maybe a couple other nature magazines, and off we would go. And we walked, we had different places we would walk to. We would walk. So there was a bridge that had a creek by it. There was a place behind our house where we could go that had a creek. All these different places. And we would walk, and we would read different nature stories and Sabbath school lessons and things like that. And so she wanted to try to get us away from some of those influences that she didn't want us watching college football on Sabbath afternoon. And so those were the kinds of things that she really worked hard for. Now I want to tell you an interesting thing. When we moved from Carthage, I'm kind of all over the place, so forgive me a little bit, but you'll see where we're going here in a minute. When we moved from Carthage to Des Moines, we had been there for 3 weeks. 3 weeks in the Des Moines church. And somebody came to my mom and they said, hey, would you please teach Sabbath school? Little kids. That's where she helped out with little kids. It was a different world. They didn't have sterling volunteers back then. Hey, would you come help teach in Sabbath school? 3 weeks. Well, my mom was a teacher by trade. She was a licensed teacher. And so she thought, well, this is kind of neat. So she applied, when there was an opening, she applied to teach at the Adventist school. And she was told that at the board meeting, when they decided whether or not to hire her, that what was said was, Mrs. Sager would make a great teacher for our school if she didn't wear a wedding ring. Maybe you realize how things were, at that time, and so I see people. This is what I see people today that the least little thing makes them say, you know what, that church is a bunch of hypocrites, or they say, that church isn't very loving, or that church isn't very caring. I'm going to leave. I'm going to go somewhere. I don't need those people. Let me tell you. You couldn't have done anything, I think, to get my mom out of the church. She had a very special love for the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And I think about how people might react today, or even back then, how people might react. For her, she was upset, but it had no effect on how she felt about the church, how she felt about God, or her relationship with Jesus Christ. It's easy to get offended, and today we live in a very offended culture. We live in a culture that gets put off by a lot of different stuff. Oh, I can't believe you said that to me. I can't believe you disrespected me like that. My mom, there was no question that Seventh-day Adventist Church was her church. There was a lot of great and wonderful things that happened. She was, for the most part, she was able to overlook. My brother and I can really share with you some hilarious stuff about it. She could hold a grudge. Don't get me wrong. Like if you did her wrong, she remembered it for like the next. Even when by the way, she had Alzheimer's. Okay, so she didn't always remember which grandkids went with which of us, but she could remember who did her wrong 30 years ago. She would match me up with my brother's wife, and then she would say, I remember when so. But here was the thing. She remembered it, but she didn't let it make her bitter. She believed that God and His church were more important than anything else, including anything personally that happened to her. So I remember her as a person who had great sacrifice, who picked up and moved away from home so that her kids could have the best chance of sharing her faith when they grew older. I remember her as a person who, yes, she knew when she had been done wrong, but it never affected the way that she felt and lived towards the church and towards God. And of course, as my brother and I got older, she started, when are we going to get, first of all, when are you going to get married? Okay? And I would to start to, I was dating a girl, and she was involved in like 4 or 5 weddings over the summer. And my mom one day made the comment, oh, you know what they say, always a bridesmaid, never a bride. To which my brother quickly responded, you know what they say, always a pallbearer, never a corpse. So that was kind of, I don't think my mom didn't make any more of those comments after that. But she wanted us to get married, and the reason she wanted us to get married was because she wanted grandkids. Okay? It had nothing to do with us. Okay. Life had moved on from us a long time ago. It was now about her getting grandkids. So we've both been married for quite a while. And we ended up with an addition to our family. Our little boy who turned 14 on Thursday. And we called up my mom, and it was kind of a surprise. But we said, hey, you're going to be a grandma. So she immediately was all excited, and she wanted, I can't wait to get down there, and I want to see him. And I said, now Mom, before you get too excited about this, I need to let you know something about your grandson. His father was from Mexico. His father is Mexican. His mom is half Puerto Rican and half Caucasian. She said, well, what does that mean? I said, well, that means that when he grows up, there's a 75% chance he's going to speak Spanish. Thought that would get more laugh. messing with my mom. And my mom says, you mean to tell me, after all these years I've waited to be a grandma, and I'm finally going to be a grandparent, and I'm going to be able to talk to my grandson? My brother just looked at me and shook his head. But she looked forward to being a grandparent, and of course, as years went on, I remember it was 2010. I was running summer camp at Broken Arrow Ranch, and she and my dad came up to visit, and they had a little dog. Okay, this is the kind of dog you have to meet to understand. This dog came to my ordination. Okay, this dog went everywhere with them. His name was Peppy, and everybody hated Peppy. Okay, I can say that now. Okay, everybody hated this dog. We got the dog because in 2001, my grandmother's neighbor passed away. And, I'm sorry, 1999, my grandmother's neighbor passed away, and we got the dog. Okay, so somehow we lived with this dog. This dog didn't die until like 2016 or something. This dog was like 140 years old, like in like regular years. Like he was born like Civil War. This dog went everywhere with me. And this dog was born before Hawaii was a state, I'm pretty sure. This dog remembers Hawaii joining the Union. But this dog, he came to my ordination, and there he is, and I'm sitting up front, and I'm sitting next to, how many of you guys know the evangelist Ron Halverson Sr.? Okay, his son, Ron Halverson Jr., he and I became really good friends over the years. And Ron Jr. and I are sitting next to each other. Conference president is sitting right next to me. This is why I'm sitting next to me on the stage. And the conference president leans over and says, who's the family with the dog in the front row? I said, that would be my mom and dad. So she has this dog with her. And so this is 9 years later. She has the dog with her. She comes to camp. And we leave the dog at the camp, and we're driving into town for dinner. And my mom was just locked in on worrying about the dog. And then she started asking where we were. And then she started asking what we were doing. And I have to admit, I probably got a little impatient with her on that trip, because she was just so locked in on the dog. I called up my brother a day or two later, and I said, hey, what's going on with the dog? said, sorry, we haven't told you yet. She has dementia, and we think it's Alzheimer's. And so we saw a progression from that point on. So for the last 10 years, she's had Alzheimer's, and honestly, you watch somebody become a different person. Just like as you watch your kids grow up and you try to see them become different people as they grow through the years, you see the opposite happen. And so I have to say, we were blessed in that she always knew who my brother and I were. She never got to the point, even through the last 10 years, she never got to the point where she didn't know who we were. Now, sometimes she thought that his wife was my wife. And that didn't make any of us happy. And sometimes she thought that, the grandkids would get mixed up a little bit. But she always knew who we were. And back in July, my brother called me and said, I just got a call from hospice. They said that Mom's probably not going to make it through the night. But she did. And a few days later, she was kind of back to her normal self. In September, the same thing happened again. But again, she went back to her normal self. And then finally, on October 3rd, my brother texted me. And he said, hey, you need to call me. And of course, I know instantly what it is. So, here's what I want to emphasize, and that is, number one, who is it you want to influence? Who do you want to influence? You see, I see people today who want to change the world. I see people today, I'm gonna channel, I'm gonna go on Facebook, and I'm gonna make a post, and I'm gonna tell you how awful so-and-so is, and I'm gonna change the world. Okay? Guess what you did? Nothing. Didn't do anything. That makes people mad at you. Decide who you want to influence. See, my mom decided early on that her two boys were her life. That's who she needed to influence. That's who she needed to live for. That's who she needed to make decisions for. She needed to leave a legacy, and we were her legacy. And so even though she didn't want to leave Carthage, she left Carthage. Even though she didn't want to do a lot of the things she did them anyway. Because she knew what her sphere of influence was. She knew who it was she could have an effect on, and she didn't live her life for everyone else. As we grew up and went away, she went back to work at a public school in Des Moines. It was a mostly minority type school, and she just fell in love with those kids. And she would pick up pop bottles, pop cans. So much like here in Iowa, they're worth 5 cents. And she would pick up pop cans, put money away, and then if she saw a kid that didn't have lunch, she would make sure that kid got lunch. My dad, if he'd driving, my dad would say, there's a nickel. And he was actually pointing at a soda cans. But that was my mom she knew who she could influence. And she didn't try to change the world. She tried to change the world for the people that she knew. And I think that's important because I think sometimes we get, I don't want to say think small, but sometimes think small is the right thing to do. Who can I influence? Who has God placed in my path? Who has God put in my life that I can have an influence over? Who has God placed in front of me that I can tell the story of salvation, that I can tell them that there's a Savior who loves them? That was what my mom realized. She realized who her sphere of influence was. She wasn't afraid to step out of big things. And she wasn't afraid to step out of her comfort zone if she knew it was going to benefit those people. If she knew it was going to mean a better future. My mom didn't have to be a headline. Mom didn't have to be a headline. She was happy being behind the scenes praying. She was happy not being the one who was up front. She was happy knowing that if she did her job right, she may not ever get mentioned in the newspaper, but she would know that she'd done her job well. And that's what I really want to leave you with this morning as the lesson from my mother's life. Know who it is that you can influence. Know who it is that you can have an effect on. Live for Jesus for those people. Live for Jesus for the ones that you know you have an influence over. Don't worry about headlines. Don't worry about who gets credit. Don't worry about whose name gets mentioned as being the best or the greatest. Worry about whether or not I shared the love that Jesus has shared with me. Be concerned that I have done everything I can. And by the way, it doesn't mean that everybody in your sphere of influence is going to become a Christian. Parents, I know sometimes you look at your kids and you say, man, what did I do wrong? It may not be that you did anything wrong. Okay? You may have been a great positive influence. That was your job. Your job wasn't to force your kids to be what you wanted them to be. And I know sometimes that can be difficult to hear. Maybe it's a relief. Be faithful to what God has placed in your life. Share with them Jesus Christ. And don't give up. Even if they accept Jesus, continue to pray for them and to live for them. Next week, we will begin our series in the book of Colossians. But I just felt like I wanted to share with you that even if you're not a person who makes headlines, and even if you're not a person who's always up front, you can be somebody who changes the world for those around you. Bow our heads for a word of prayer. Our gracious Father in heaven, thank you for a beautiful Sabbath day. Thank you for an opportunity. I know I love to focus on the Bible and the stories from there, but this morning I just wanted to take a few moments and share with somebody about somebody that I know who lived for you. So I ask that her life would extend beyond those, even to those who never even met her. I hope that her story would influence others and would continue to spread love, your love, and the message of your salvation. In your name we pray. Amen.
First thing you got to start talking about.
While you're waiting for Ward to show up, just a reminder that in the middle room of the Builder Chapel wing there, we understand that COVID has taken its toll on employment and jobs and things like that. So if you find yourself in need of, you need a little extra help with food or things like that, there is some extra canned goods there, some food stuff there. So if you find yourself,
beautifully based on God.
us can be reunited with those that we've loved, and we can meet people who we've never met before who share our journey. My mother always said the first person she wanted to meet when she got to heaven was Jesus. And so, hopefully that's our hope and desire. Let's go ahead for a benediction. Our gracious Father in heaven, we ask for a very special blessing on each one who's here, each one who is listening to us online, each one who will watch this service in the future. Lord, we ask for the blessing that only you can give, that we would be faithful to the life you've given us, that we wouldn't worry about what we don't have and the people that we don't influence, but that we would be faithful to the calling you've given to us. Lord, this is a tremendous blessing to be faithful to you in the things that you've placed in our life. And we ask that you would bless us with knowing and seeing what those things are, and blessing to be faithful to them and to you until you come again. Lord, come soon, because we can't wait to see you. Amen.
Okay.